Hope everyone's doing well. I know you haven't heard from me for a long time. Lots have been going on this year, so I'll fill you in a little bit in this video. But as you can see, I'm out on a ride this morning. This is the first ride I've done in August. It's mid-August now, 15th I think today. It's been too hot, you know, pretty much all of July and the first part of August was well into the 40s every day, and also with a hot wind, so it made it feel even hotter. It wasn't really very safe to go out on a bike, so I haven't been going out on my bike. I've been doing other training, but I've not been going out on the bike. So today's first day out on the bike, and I'm not going that far, but just having a ride. I'll spin you guys around if I can. Here we go. And I've been doing some long distance events, so I've done 2 long distance events this year so far, and I've got another one at the end of September, beginning of October. So I've got some of that kit on this bike. This isn't the bike I use for those events. I use a gravel bike. Some of you will remember me buying that and training on that when I first started to get back into cycling quite a few years ago now, 2017, 2018. So the bags I've got on here, I'm just testing. It's much longer story, but I had some issues with having that bag that's on the saddle. I had some issues with that with the suspension, which I've resolved now. They're not really intended to go on a suspension bike, and the gravel bike, of course, doesn't have any suspension. But as you can imagine, that rear wheel moves up and down, and I used it. I did a race from Madrid to Santiago de Compostela, the pilgrim race, which I've done before, and I did that and finished that, which was 700 kilometers, and then the following day I rode on to the coast and did another 90 kilometers, and for that I put that bag on after the race. But silly me, when I finished the race I should have recalibrated the suspension and recalibrated the tyres, and I didn't do that. I was very tired and I had a B&B to stay in that night, so I just loaded everything onto the bike and sent the rest of my kit back to Madrid. And I should have recalibrated the suspension, because of course with that bag on the back it's much heavier and the suspension was too soft for that. So I found on that next day that I had to ride very, very gingerly, because the rear wheel kept fouling that bag on the back of the bike. So took some of the enjoyment away. But anyway, it's live and learn. And so today, well, I've got all the kit on this bike, and I've recalibrated all the suspension and the tyre pressures, and it's running perfectly. So it's just my own fault. I should have done that before. So I've just got it on this bike because this is the bike I'm going out on. I'm also running a different GPS system now, and this is just for these long events, and I'll show you if I can. I've got a proper full-on GPS here now on the handlebars. If I can get you on here, let me just see. Here we are. It's very hard to see the screen in the sun, so I hope I'm catching what I'm trying to catch. Yeah, I am. Yeah. So the big GPS is a proper full-on GPS with a very, very good map system on it, and then I've got my cycling computer out the front of that, and then I don't know if you'll be able to see, but underneath the cycling computer I've now got a mount which goes on that bracket under the cycling computer, which will take like a GoPro or anything that takes that mount, but that's intended for my lights, because you need to have lights in these long distance events. You have to have lights on. It's a regulation. So I've got some fantastic lights which work off a battery that fits on the bike, and that allows me to mount my bike computer out the front with the light underneath, and then have that main navigation computer up on the top with a really great mapping system. So yeah, it's a really good setup, and I'm just testing that on this bike, but it will go on the gravel bike. Probably towards the end of this month I'll put all this set up on the gravel bike, and then September I'll be training on the gravel bike rather than on the mountain bike. I just wanted to kill two birds with one stone with this outing, and you know, test the GPS setup and the bracket setup, and also test this bags with the correct suspension settings. So alright guys, well, I'm up on the plains. It's warming up. It's supposed to be about between 32 and 35 today, so I don't want to be too long. It'll get hotter later. It's much better than being in the 40s, well in the 40s. And we've got a lovely breeze. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, but there is actually a breeze today, and the breeze is actually cool rather than hot, so that feels fantastic. When you stop, you don't feel like you're being cooked. Or of course, when the breeze is actually hotter than the air around it, you just stop and you feel even worse than when you were riding. So you know, it's nice, feels nice. All right guys, well, I'm going to carry on a little bit further, and then I'll stop and speak to you again about these races I've been doing. Okay, speak to you soon. Bye for now. Well guys, a lot of you have been down here with me before. We're on the bridge over the Rio Grande. Last time we were down here there was a lot more water, and there were a lot of people down here, kids were playing and everything. It was a holiday day if I remember correctly, and the kids were all down here playing. This is the Rio Grande, and it makes its way down to the Guadalhorce. So just around the corner down there, it goes under a big bridge on the main road, and then on the other side it meets up with the Guadalhorce River. So it's a popular spot to come to. Normally I carry on here and go up here and carry on up, but it's getting quite hot now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and go over on the other side over there, and there's a nice tree-lined route back to Coeen, so I'm going to take that. It's much cooler, so I'll bring you along on that, guys. All right, speak to you soon. So this is the track alongside the river, guys. As you can see, it's a bit more technical than the other one, but it has some shade as you ride along here because of the cane. I'm going a bit slower than I normally would along here, holding the camera. I'm just going to change gear, hold on. There we go. I suppose it would be better to put the camera in my other hand. Let's do that, and then I'll be able to change gear without putting the camera down. Hold on. There we go. Circus act. So as you can see, it's a bit cooler along here. You get some shade from the bamboo that's growing, at the side of the river. When the river comes up, a lot of this track floods. You'll see here in a minute we're going to go through a dip with a stream. There's a little dip here and then a larger one further along where the streams come down to the river and cross over. So sections of this you could ride along, but of course it gets cut off in the low spots when there's a lot of rain. So this becomes unusable. And a one-handed rock ride in there. So yeah, we're down by the river now, by the Rio Seco. It's not the Rio Grande. I'm going to ride along here. This is a river that comes into the Rio Grande from the side. It's much smaller. So I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you've all been keeping well. Sorry I haven't been putting much content up. I think last time I put a few videos up and intended to get going and put some content up, and then busy and all sorts of different things. So I've been racing this year. I've been racing ultra events, so much longer events. Previously I was doing marathon events, which are kind of anything up to about 120 kilometers, and now this year I've gone for the ultra, which is doing less events but much longer. So I did an 830 odd kilometer event earlier this year, which you had to finish in 100 hours, so basically 4 days. Then I did another event which was in stages, which is an event I've done before, called the Pilgrim Race, and that's 700 kilometers but in 7 stages, and every night you stop in a camp. They put the tents up for you and you sleep in a tent, and there's an evening meal and a breakfast, and you carry on like that. So that's a good event, different type of event. And when that event finished in Santiago de Compostela, I carried on the next day and did another nearly 100 kilometers to the coast and stayed there for a few days, just riding round. Very pretty up there, much cooler than down here up in the north of Spain, on the north coast, just above Portugal. Portugal kind of takes a slice out of the landmass that's mostly Spain, what they call Iberia, and just above that Spain returns out to the coast. So I spent a couple of days up there. Very picturesque area, a lot of very old villages, some of which are abandoned and some are still populated. In fact, you go across a bridge, very old medieval bridge, in one town where, well, say town, it's a village, where it's actually one of the most beautiful villages in Spain, you know, designated as one of the most beautiful villages in Spain. So very interesting, as well as riding your bike. You get to see a lot of different areas and different types of vegetation. There's a lot of woodland up there, so you're riding through woodland a lot of the time. We have very little woodland down here, and what there is tends to be like this. It's pretty much all eucalyptus, which is not a native species of Spain. It's come from Australia. It was planted here to repopulate the forests quickly because they cut all the wood down. So up there you've got some very old wood forests with the, you know, oak, all kinds of timber. So much more interesting. Some of it untouched for, you know, probably hundreds of years, the more remote stuff. really nice. And then I've got another event at the end of September, beginning of October, which they've done it twice, they've reconned it twice, so we kind of know what it's like from pictures, etc., but not exactly. And that's 930 kilometres. These are all off-road, of course, not on the road, although apparently this next one uses more road than the other ones we've been doing, just to link up the off-road parts. So I think it's about 20% on the road of the whole ride, but much less climbing. The 830 odd kilometre one that I did had a lot of climbing, so not only was it a long way, but it was also, quite hard, whereas this one is longer, but the organiser said it's roughly the same kind of effort, or even perhaps a bit less than the other one to complete it. So again, you've got 100 hours total. You start at 6 o'clock in the morning in Madrid on Wednesday, and you have to be finished by Sunday morning. So it's up to you how you do it. You can ride all day and stop and sleep at night if you want, or you can keep going, or a mixture. You can do it however you want, and you can stop in a tent, or you can stop in a pension or hotel, or whatever you want, bed and breakfast, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. So in my pack, I've got under my seat, I've got a bivy bag, which is a waterproof bag. I've got it's not a sleeping bag, it's like a liner for the bivy bag, which just gives you another 5 degrees over the ambient temperature. But what I've also got is a down jacket and a down trousers. So they're those feather-filled jackets that keep you very warm. And I've got trousers and jacket of that. So what I tend to do if I'm going to sleep in that bag is I put them on about 5 minutes before I stop riding, and that warms them up and warms me up. And then if I get into the liner in the bag like that, I'm really pretty warm. And generally the temperatures aren't going to drop much below kind of 12 degrees at night. So that plus 5, 6, 7 degrees with your bag is really okay, quite comfortable. And so depending on how I'm doing in the races, if I'm sort of a bit behind, I tend to do that and sleep for a few hours, or if it gets very hot during the day, I stop and sleep for a few hours and then carry on. You have to have lights on your bike so you can continue in the evening, but I mean it's light until 9, and it's light in the mornings around sort of 7 o'clock, so you can put a few hours in during the day. Ride 12 to 14 hours every day, so you can get some good kilometres in. You're aiming to ride kind of 210, 220 per day, depending on the type of going. Obviously, in a day with a lot of climbing, you might ride less, but generally that's what you want to be doing to get your distance in the 4 days, 100 hours. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. So just 3 big events this year, and physically that's enough. It takes enough out of you that you don't need to be doing more with your training and everything else. The first one, I started that race at, I think I was 78.6 kilos, and I finished at 76.2. So lost a couple of kilos in the race. So you know, you're losing quite a bit of weight during the course of the race, because it's pretty much impossible to fuel yourself with the calories you're putting out. You're putting out about 8,000 calories a day, 8 to 10,000. You know, you can't eat that much food, because, you know, even if you could sit down and have a massive meal, then you wouldn't be able to ride your bike afterwards. So you have to eat what you can when you can, little and often, and as high calorie as possible. But ultimately you're going to be in a deficit, so you're going to lose weight, and you can't rely on this traditional kind of gels and energy drinks and etc. that you would normally be able to rely on in a shorter event, because they're just not good enough. They're too short term. You're not going to be able to recover using that. You've got to have something much more long term. So I tend to use gels and bars and all that type of stuff during the day, but I also stop and have real food whenever I can. You know, meat for protein, pasta or rice if you can get pasta and rice for carbohydrate, combination of the two if possible, you know, whatever's available. A lot of the supermarkets have like ready meals in, which are actually cooked, and they're intended just to be heated up, and you know, you don't have to heat them up. So you can buy like a ready-made paella or something like that, which has meat and fish, rice, vegetables in it, and just eat that cold, and you get a lot from that, a lot of calories. So yeah, that's the type of thing I've been doing, and I've been doing it on the gravel bike, which is much faster than the mountain bike off-road. You can't ride over the same kind of terrain that you would ride over on a mountain bike, of course, but it's a much faster mode of travel, and it's been very good. It's been enjoyable. I've been enjoying it. We're just coming down to the other river now, so we followed one river along, now we're going to come to another river. This is called the Rio Periales. Turn around, this is a bit slippy here, so I've got to be a bit careful. Oh, it's not too bad today. There's a gravel works along here, and sometimes the lorries churn that up a bit, trucks. We'll cross over to the other side of the river because there's some shade over there in amongst those eucalyptus trees. Alright guys, well that's a little bit of what I've been doing. I also hope you've enjoyed having a little ride along. Found somewhere where I can hold the camera when we're going along here. I've got the little DJI camera, it's got the gimbal on, it sort of smooths everything out. And I have got a couple of mounts for it now to go on on your rucksack, so I'll try that next time, pop it on and see what sort of footage we get with that. Might be easier because of course I won't have to hold on to it. I had an animal market here the other day, the Coen animal market, livestock market, so we'll go and have a quick look. They kind of made a bit of a area and stalls and everything. I expect all the stalls are gone, but I imagine yeah, here it is, the area. Oh no, it's still got some of the stalls are still here. They made this area and a kind of booth for the auctioneer and everything else. I'm going to ride around this because that's quite soft, I think. That sand won't be very easy one-handed. These are those eucalyptus trees I was saying about. You know, they're everywhere, and the other thing they generate is this very dry bark which peels off, which is great fuel for fires. So they are actually taking some of this out now and trying to replant more indigenous species, but of course it takes a long time for those things to get going. This is where they had all the stalls for the animals that were being sold. They put them all under here so they'd got shade. You can see some of the straw and hay that was here for them. So yeah, they did quite a nice job of it this year. I came through on the bike just before it was going to be held, when they had everything set up here. It all looked pretty good.